This video discusses depression and contains brief mention of suicidal ideation. If you need support, please call 1767 or refer to the link in the caption for other resources.
Hello, welcome to the Navigating Neurodiversity podcast. I'm Vivian, registered psychologist, and today we've got Dr. Teng Ying here with us to talk about depression and adjustment disorders in children and adolescents. All right, Dr. Teng is a consultant psychiatrist from PsyMed Consultants, and she was formerly a consultant psychiatrist at the National University Hospital, NUH. So Dr. Teng works with youths and with a variety of conditions, including ADHD, autism, as well as anxiety and depression. So I'll link Dr. Teng's profile and website in the caption below. Before we start, we also wanted to, do a bit of clarification because I know it can be quite confusing. There are a lot of different professionals operating in the same space, like psychologists, counselors, psychiatrists, and things like that. So just do a bit of clarification. So a psychiatrist like Dr. Teng would be a medical doctor first and foremost. So they would have completed the medical training and then they went for further training in psychiatry, which is a branch of medicine that specializes in treatment and diagnosis of mental health conditions, right? So because as a medical doctor, she'll be able to prescribe medication and do evaluations and also some therapy as well. Whereas someone like me is a psychologist, so our training will be in psychology, which is the understanding of human behavior, and in my case, specializing in child development. So even when we have a doctorate degree, that will be a doctorate in psychology and not in medicine. Yeah, so I hope that clarifies. Dr. Teng, would you like to add on a bit about the work that you do?
For the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be here. So I'm a psychiatrist who has done most of the training at National University Hospital, focusing on child mental health as well as women's mental health. So in my work, I saw patients in clinic settings, worked with young children in pediatric wards, those with chronic medical illnesses and having difficulties coping with their conditions, and also work very closely with school teachers and counselors to help students with mental health difficulties through the school outreach team. I've also completed a Master of Science program in Child and Adolescent Mental Health at King's College London. And over the past 1 year, I have been in private practice, so I'm currently now based in Mount Elizabeth, Novena.
Right, yeah. So I wanted to add on as well, where psychologists and psychiatrists do work quite closely together. So for example, when psychologists get a referral from psychiatrists, it might be to do psychological assessments such as IQ testing, academic testing, testing for things like autism or ADHD, right? And I would refer clients to Dr. Teng actually for further diagnosis, medication when necessary, and Dr. Teng also does some counseling and therapy as well.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so maybe diving into our topic for today, which is about depression and adjustment disorders in youth, I'll invite Ying to give us an overview and talking a bit about symptoms and etiology.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So depression and adjustment disorders really occur on a spectrum of severity. So we can start with normal day-to-day mood disturbances as a reaction to daily stressors. For example, if we didn't do well for an exam, or if we had a disagreement with a friend, then we might have some distress and mood changes as a result of that, but then we're able to bounce back after a couple of days. Then on the other end of the spectrum, there would be major depressive disorder, where we see more severe symptoms. So for example, persistent sadness or irritability lasting for at least a 2-week period. And there could also be loss of interest as well as physical symptoms like sleep disturbances, fatigue, and also appetite changes, weight changes. And in terms of the thinking, a child who is depressed might then start to have very negative thoughts like feelings of worthlessness, guilt, even thoughts of death and suicide as well.
Yeah.
So in order to make the diagnosis of a disorder, there needs to be sufficient functional impairment in different areas, such as in academics, and then also have a significant impact on relationships, or it could cause a very prominent distress to the individual. And then in between, there is adjustment disorder, where there is a psychological reaction to a stressor, and there could be feelings of sadness, anxiety, behavioral changes. So adjustment disorders would be lower in severity as compared to major depressive disorder, and will also require good treatment in order to prevent it from progressing to major depressive disorder.
Right,
Yes.
right. Would you see that as kind of a possible precursor to major depression as well, where it
Yes.
starts off with adjustment disorders, and then when it exceeds 6 months and you find that it's still persistent?
That's right, that's right. So in adjustment disorders, if the stressor abates, then the symptoms can improve. However, if the symptoms are very persistent, even after the stressor is removed, then we might consider a diagnosis of major depressive disorder.
Right, yes. So I wanted to talk to you about that article in the Straits Times. I think you might have seen it also. It was published sometime last month. So the IMH-led study, the National Youth Mental Health Study, which showed that nearly a third of our youth in Singapore are reporting poor mental health, high levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. And I think there was an NUS-led study that was published last year in 2023, which I believe, Jan, you were involved in as well, that had similar findings that a third of the youth in Singapore are reporting, mental health symptoms, but just 1 in 10 parents were able to spot this clinical level symptoms. So I wanted to get your views.
Yes, I think these are very important studies that highlight the current issues that are affecting our youth, and it actually gives us an idea of how big the problem is and how many youths are really affected by mental health difficulties, stress, and things like that. And I think what I liked about what was shared to the public was the influence of social media on young people, about how they might be able to get a lot of information, for example, about dieting, or there could be significant comparisons between themselves and what they see online. People who look very slim and attractive, and then that causes some body image concerns within themselves as well.
Yeah.
And so it really emphasizes the need to have some degree of guidance for the young people when it comes to filtering and internalizing all this information and images that they see online all the time.
Absolutely.
So that's why the role of parents, the role of teachers, and the people around them would be really, really crucial in helping them to navigate these vast amounts of information that they receive.
Yeah.
And as young people, they might have difficulties managing the kind of influences from social media.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that these two articles came out, and by highlighting that this problem exists, that many youths are affected by mental health conditions, then perhaps that would mean we require more resources and more intervention programs to help the young people who present with mental health difficulties.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I really feel for them, because even as an adult, I'm influenced. I'm like, wow, this looks so good, filters and everything. I mean, what more a growing, adolescent who's at the stage where there's so much self-doubt. I also wanted to talk a bit about neurodiversity. Like, what do you see is the link between mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, and neurodiverse conditions like ADHD and autism?
Yes, so there have been studies that have found that in young people with ADHD and autism, they do have higher rates of depression and anxiety. So when we think about young people with ADHD, they actually experience many difficulties and challenges in their daily lives. For example, they might have problems with their schoolwork, difficulties achieving at school, and that can affect their self-esteem, that can affect their mood if they feel that they're not doing as well as their peers or not meeting the expectations of their parents and their teachers. So young people with ADHD, they might have some behavioral issues, for example, always being late for appointments, or being very irritable and quick to anger, and then that can affect relationships and friendships. So these are additional difficulties that they face on top of the usual stressors that young people face. So that puts them at risk of conditions like depression. As for young people with autism, they are also facing many challenges. If there are changes in their lives, for example, transiting to a new school or moving to a new country, that can be tough for them to deal with. And if they have also problems relating to people, seeking social and emotional support when they are distressed, then that can also increase the risk of them developing mental health conditions like depression. So we do want to provide good support to young people with neurodivergent conditions, and help them with any underlying difficulties that they may have, help them with coping strategies so that they can develop resilience to manage stress, and thereby we would be able to prevent conditions like depression and anxiety from developing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of the studies on resilience, right, actually shows that the presence of those social connections, like you said, friendships and things like that are so important. And I think that's probably why they're also at risk, because a lot of them do have challenges forming those bonds and connections, and having that social support that they really need to help to buffer them through all of these life challenges as well. Then, sometimes parents do wonder, right, when they see like mood swings or mood changes in their child, they might wonder, is it just normal developmental changes like puberty and so on, or is it something that's more serious? What do you think are some red flags that parents can watch out for?
Yes, so it can be difficult to determine whether the mood changes are related to puberty, are related to normal stressors that the child is encountering, or could it be depression or adjustment disorder? And it's hard to say, how an average teenager should behave, once he or she reaches puberty, or how he or she should respond when there is adversity, for example. I think most of us, we would be encountering perhaps a small group of teenagers day to day, unless we are school teachers or we're working in mental health, where we see hundreds of young people over the course of a year. So I would say to parents that if we notice that there is a significant change in a child's behavior or mood, for example, more social withdrawal, a child who is usually quite chatty and cheerful, becoming moody, more withdrawn and quiet, not joining in the family for activities. If we notice a significant change and we are worried about it, then perhaps we would want to take the opportunity to have a chat with the young person and ask how he or she is feeling, whether there's anything that we can do to help. And I think it's really helpful always to start with a conversation in order to find out more. The child may or may not be ready to talk about the problems, but at least the child knows that the parent is concerned and is willing to listen and help. And perhaps when he or she feels ready, then you'll be more willing to come forward to share more about their difficulties. Yeah. So the changes would be what we noticed. If parents also notice a marked change in the level of functioning, for example, deterioration of the grades, and then a change in the relationships, or having fewer friends, or having less desire to go out and meet friends that they would otherwise enjoy meeting, then these could be the signs of mood changes, possibly signs of adjustment disorder or depression. Yes. So we do want to find out more from the child to see how we can help. As for the more alarming or concerning kind of symptoms, parents also might want to look out for any risky behaviors as well. When we think about risk, we often think about self-harm and suicide. Young people with depression can also become very angry and aggressive and irritable. And rather than focusing on the behavior of the anger outbursts or the shouting or the rudeness, what could be the underlying cause of that? What is causing the distress that then leads to the anger outburst? So we do want to find out more about it, about the reasons for the anger. Young people who are depressed might also engage in other risky activities like smoking or drinking alcohol, vaping, trying out drugs. Online activities can also take on a more risky kind of dimension. Like if, let's say, they are having conversations with people and it's taking on a more sexual kind of nature, or if they are also, engaging in like casual sexual encounters, for example. So these would be risky behaviors that we would also be concerned about and might want to explore further about.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because a lot of times when we think about depression and so on, we have the mental image, as a layperson, like feeling sad, crying and things like that. But what you pointed out is that a lot of young people, it might not present that way. It might present more as anger, frustration, lashing out, or even engaging in risky behaviors as well. That could be a sign. So we often talk to parents about that iceberg, that what you see is really the tip of the iceberg, and we need to really find out what's going on underneath that's resulting in those behaviors. So Jiaying, I also wanted to find out about your assessment, your approach to assessment. Like how would you assess, patients that come?
Okay, all right. So my assessment usually starts with a conversation, a chat with the young person. I would want to assure the young person that whatever we discuss during sessions would be confidential. So whatever he or she wishes to keep private from their parents or other family members, I would respect that. Unless the child talks about having suicidal ideation, for example, so there's some element of risk, then I might need to actually get help from the people around the child to protect him or her. Yes. So during the conversation, we would ask about how he or she is feeling, whether there's any stress or concerns or worries currently, and then also assess the level of functioning as well in different areas, in school, at home, and socially as well. In order to determine firstly whether these are normal mood disturbances, could it be adjustment disorder or major depression? Are there any risk issues that we need to take note of? And all this information will help me to actually have a holistic picture of what the child is going through. And then it will help me to actually come up with a treatment plan together with the young person. It is very important to gather information from the parents and the caregivers as well. And if there is also information from school teachers and friends, then that gives us a better idea about how the child is behaving and what he or she might be concerned about. So the holistic assessment is usually very, very helpful.
Yeah, so getting sources of information from the child as well as informants like parents and teachers, and then you will triangulate and to come up with a treatment plan.
That's
right. So let's go into treatment next. What are some approaches that in terms of best practices for treatment of depression and adjustment disorders?
Yes. Yeah. So it is very important to first confirm that the diagnosis is there, either adjustment disorder or major depressive disorder, and then to determine the level of severity of the symptoms as well as the degree of functional impairment and distress is causing to the child and the family. In my practice, I like to use rating scales for parent and then the child to fill in to report on the severity and the frequency of the symptoms, so that we are able to have an idea before treatment of how severe the condition is, rather than estimation of how severe or how distressed the child is. So then that allows us to discuss with the child and the family what we are faced with. Is it mild, moderate, or severe depression or adjustment disorder? Because the research has found that for mild conditions, mild depression and mild adjustment disorder, it can respond well to psychosocial interventions like psychological therapy, as well as support from schools, support from the family to help to reduce the stress that the child is experiencing. Whereas for moderate to severe conditions, what we do know is that there is good response to both antidepressant medication and also psychological therapy. So when we are discussing the treatment plan, we always explain what the options are, what's available, and where can we find the best evidence for a particular type of treatment, and then we make the recommendations. Often I get asked, how do antidepressants work? Why is it that we prescribe a tablet for a child who is feeling sad or having problems in school? How would that tablet make a difference to a child's life? And then that brings us back to causation, the causes of adjustment disorder and depression. We know that stress affects the body. When we are experiencing stress, high levels of stress hormones start to increase in the body. And if we are exposed to high levels of stress over a long period of time, the chronic stress hormone called cortisol starts to become elevated in the body. So cortisol can have a number of health effects. It can affect our immune system, so we fall sick more easily. It can affect our blood sugar, so there's increased risk of diabetes, for example. Cortisol can also affect the mood part of the brain and result in a reduction in the neurochemical called serotonin. And when there are very low levels of serotonin in the mood centers of the brain, we will experience the symptoms of depression, like the persistent sadness, the fatigue, sleep disturbances, and the negative thoughts. So antidepressants work by increasing the levels of serotonin in the brain, and thereby it helps the child to feel better, have increase in energy, have better sleep and concentration as well. At the same time, it is important to have psychological therapy alongside the medication so that the child can learn coping strategies, develop ways to challenge the negative thoughts that they have, learn how to seek social support from the people around them. And if they are able to go through the full course of psychotherapy, then subsequently, when they have completed the course of medication, there's a greater likelihood that we'll be able to taper off the medication, and yet they're able to have the coping skills to deal with new stressors and to prevent relapses in future. So that's the importance of combination treatment.
Yes, absolutely. So on the topic of medication, like for parents who are worried about medications and so on, they would often ask about, are there natural ways to like boost serotonin or dopamine in the system and so on? Well, what do you think of that?
Yes. There are non-medication ways of increasing the serotonin in our body and increase dopamine, which is the happiness and well-being neurochemical as well. So pleasurable activities like walking your dog, or spending time with someone you care about, engaging in a hobby that you really enjoy or are good at. These are activities that actually can increase serotonin levels, but the elevation in the serotonin level might be short-lived. So after the activity, if there really is that serotonin imbalance and deficit in the brain, then it might not be able to provide like sustained, increase in the serotonin for the child to be able to recover from the depression. So we do encourage more of these activities to allow the child to feel the sense of well-being and happiness. But if, let's say, the high levels of cortisol has caused a significant degree of serotonin imbalance in the brain, then it can be hard to address this imbalance with just activities and like psychosocial interventions alone. And perhaps adding on medication would be able to, like, facilitate a faster recovery.
Yes,
for
yes.
the
So I
child.
think, I think it goes back to what you said earlier about, really determining the severity to decide what would be the best course of action, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Are there any side effects that you think, the more common ones that you tend to see with medication for depression,
Okay,
for example?
Yeah, so that's a common question about side effects of antidepressants. So the common side effects would include the gastrointestinal type of side effects like mild stomach aches, nausea or loose stools in about 20% of people who take the antidepressants. So these side effects tend to be short-lived and would generally improve after a 2-week period. Yeah. So as the body adjusts to the medication, these side effects will tend to go away.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
But particularly in young people, as the antidepressant starts to increase the level of serotonin in the brain, sometimes they might experience a bit more anxiety and restlessness and agitation as well. So that's to be expected, to have some of these increase in symptoms in the first 1 to 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, the medication also starts to take effect. And then we begin to see that the child is calmer, able to focus better, and energy levels increase as well.
Right, yeah. So that's another important question, to give parents the expectations of how long does it take before the medication starts to kick in. So you
That's
said
right.
at about the 2-week mark is
Around-
where, so they need to persist.
Yes, that's
and-
right. That's right. So it might take about 2 to 4 weeks before we can see the response to the medication.
Right.
Yeah. And then if we read up about side effects, there's many side effects that would be listed, in various information articles. So the common ones would be the gastrointestinal side effects, as well as the increase in irritability and anxiety. Some parents and young people also have read up about antidepressants and how it can actually increase suicidal ideation, for example. So there's quite a bit of information out there about this, and that's why FDA issued a black box warning, cautioning physicians about the possibility of increased suicidal ideation after the initiation of antidepressants. So when this FDA black box warning came out, actually many doctors around the world and the US became very worried and stopped prescribing antidepressants because they were concerned that the antidepressants could increase suicidal ideation and increase the suicide risk. And what was found was that the suicide rates actually increased because people were not receiving treatment for the depression. The doctors were not prescribing antidepressants, and that led to worsening of the depression and then increase of the suicide risk, and therefore higher completed suicides. So what we have learned from this experience is that while we know that antidepressants could have some mild side effects in the first few weeks, we do have strategies to initiate them gradually with close monitoring and with a detailed explanation to the child and the caregivers about what to look out for. What are some of the precautions they can take to reduce the suicide risk?
Right.
So overall, the studies have found that the antidepressants, while it could increase suicidal ideation, possibly because of the greater anxiety or restlessness that they feel, ultimately it doesn't increase the risk of completed suicides because it will bring down the suicide risk by treating the depression itself.
I see. So it increases the ideation, the risk of ideation, but not actually doing it and completing it.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would think that that's quite alarming because that's exactly what you're trying to prevent, and then it's like it becomes a risk factor. Let's go into challenges now. What are some common challenges that you face in terms of treatment for depression as well as adjustment disorders?
Yes, we do face some challenges at times. For example, if the child has difficulty engaging with the mental health professional, or might be reluctant to seek support from the people around them, or if the child has problems expressing verbally how he or she is feeling, then it does take more time and patience to try to get to know the child and to engage him or her in order to understand him better and show that we care and want to help. For parents, many of them are very concerned and understandably worried about their children, and many want to help as well. But there are also parents who, perhaps due to fear of stigma or due to some misunderstandings about mental health conditions, they might be having difficulty accepting that the child is depressed and therefore might be reluctant to get help for the child. So these are some challenges that we face when we encounter the child and the parents. The environment also can be particularly challenging if the child is still in a very stressful situation. For example, if the academic demands are still very high, if bullying is still continuing, or if there's abuse that's ongoing. So these are actually complicated problems that are very difficult to resolve. So if these stressors are still ongoing, then it can, affect the child's recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like sometimes you might have to actually collaborate with other professionals, I don't know, social services or family services
That's right.
and so on, because there could be those stresses that are continuing to take place, and despite treatment, I think those things would definitely affect the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, right? Yeah. Okay. So I think that leads us nicely into talking about the family and parents. What role do you think parents can play in the treatment process?
Okay. Parents play a really crucial role. They are in a position to provide the care and concern to the child, and what the child often needs is someone who can listen to them, someone who tries to understand them, and is able to encourage them as well, so that they are able to gather some strength during a time when they feel very vulnerable or very helpless. So I feel that parents, by agreeing to journey with the child and while receiving the support and the guidance of mental health professionals, if they're willing to support the child in the recovery journey, it can really be very beneficial for the child, because it is hard to recover on your own, especially if there's a lot of fatigue, there's low motivation levels. So if the parents are able to also manage their expectations about the child's performance in school, for example, or not get angry if the child is very tired and has difficulty waking up in the morning, to go for lessons. We always want to find out how the child is feeling, why he or she is feeling this way, why he's behaving this way. So having that close relationship allows them to have these conversations, and so the parent is able to find out more from the child when he or she notices that there's change in the behavior, or there's signs of distress in the child. So in treatment of depression and adjustment disorders, I feel support from parents and in fact the whole family, siblings, extended family, can be really beneficial.
Yeah, that's right. So you really want to provide that safe space where the child can come to you and express their feelings and so on. Yeah. I think, sometimes in Asian families, there's, we tend to be less expressive, like some families less expressive with our words and our feelings, and maybe parents themselves may not be, very expressive with talking about feelings. And I feel that sometimes could have an impact in terms of whether the child is willing to come forward to talk and to share about that.
Yes.
So as you pointed out, sometimes it could be the parent making the first move to go to the child and to say, hey, I'm here to listen, you can tell me and things like that, and that can make a difference, right? And
Yeah.
it might take time. The child may not open up immediately, but I think, that consistent effort and building that positive relationship would really make a difference as well.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay. And then maybe we'll go on to school and teachers, and I know that with some of our clients as well, there's a lot of masking going on, and kids may not exhibit a lot of these symptoms in school. So they may seem okay in school, and then, at home, that's where it becomes a lot more obvious. But for those cases that teachers notice something is going on and so on, what are some steps, do you think, that they could take? Yeah.
Yes, so school teachers are in a great position to support the young person with depression, just based on the contact time that they have with the child each day. The opportunity to observe the child interacting with classmates, and they're also able to also notice how the child is learning, whether the child is concentrating or producing the same quality of work. So teachers are in a position to detect these changes and come forward to offer their support to the child if needed. So they could provide a listening ear for the child to express emotions or their difficulties. Teachers can also continue to provide a lot of encouragement and support. If the child is having difficulties with their schoolwork, for example, then the teachers might be able to provide additional help to catch up with some of the more difficult topics, and also to reduce the stress faced by the student by extending deadlines for assignments. For example, being kinder to them if, let's say, they have a problem submitting their work on time. So I feel that teachers are a very important part of the support network that is surrounding the child.
Definitely. And I think, it's important maybe don't make assumptions that if a student hasn't done the homework, they're being lazy or, they're purposely, there could be some problems, and it's always good to check in first and see if there's any assistance that could be given to the student as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe just a last question to round off, if you have like certain messages, important messages that you would like to send to parents or teachers working with children or adolescents with depression or adjustment disorder.
Yes. Okay. I would like to say that depression and adjustment disorders are common. They affect many young people. Sometimes we see the symptoms very clearly, but sometimes it's hidden beneath the surface. But every child is willing to share. Every child is willing to express what he or she is thinking and feeling if they come across the right person who is willing to listen and be able to refrain from judgment. So they need to feel that they are having a safe space to share and to reveal, some of their vulnerabilities. And these conditions are treatable. There has been extensive research done on the effectiveness of various treatments. We know about what would be the risk and benefits of the various interventions. So we believe that the treatments do work, and we have seen many nice stories of recovery. And after a period of darkness, they really are able to continue on with their lives and, do well and feel much better as compared to before when they were experiencing depression or adjustment disorder. So feeling depressed is kind of like walking down a path and we are being surrounded by darkness and fog. And so we can't see clearly what's ahead. And it looks very bleak. And there's this fear that we will, get lost. And there's this feeling of loneliness as well. So when there's support around, various people supporting the child, they're able to perhaps shine some light on the child's path ahead to help them to be able to see more clearly about the various paths that they can take and to be able to feel less afraid and less alone. So I feel we all can play a part, in shining a light on the child and showing them the way towards recovery. So it's hard to do it alone. So we need the help and support from family, from friends, and school teachers, school counselors. So I remain hopeful that with greater awareness about the condition and increasing understanding and acceptance of mental health conditions, we would be able to come together as a community much better to help young people to develop resilience, to prevent the onset of mental health conditions like depression, and also to provide good interventions and support so that they can recover well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Teng. That was a really nice analogy. I think walking on the dark path, and we really all of us working together, not just mental health professionals, but also family, friends, teachers, right, to shine the light, and to help them to walk through this journey, not alone, but with people around them as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Teng, for taking the time today to share with us. So we really hope that the conversation has been helpful. And if you've got any other questions, feel free to put it down in the comments below. Thanks for watching and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so far so good.